o'clock, so I'll welcome you to tonight's meeting of the Health, Wellbeing and Environment Scrutiny Committee. And to go straight into our agenda, item 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies? Okay, Councillor Richards might be a bit late. Okay, thank you. All right, so item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Northcott.
I've just got one, Mr. Chairman. I've got the public health scrutiny and integrated care system safeguarding cabinet portfolio responsibilities at the county council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting, which are on pages 3 to 8. Are we happy to take these minutes as accurate?
No, Chair. Just to point out that my declaration wasn't recorded last time. Thank you. It's the same as the one just.
Okay. We'll ensure that's recorded. Thank you. Okay. Councillors, item 4, which is the Staffordshire Health Care and Overview Scrutiny Committee. There's a report on pages 9 to 14 of your pack. Are we happy to accept this update? Okay. Thank you very much. Then we'll go on to item 5, which is Wally's Quarry Odour Update, which is on pages 15 to 32, and I'll hand over to Nesta to introduce that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members. So the update report tonight is in a similar format to you've received in previous reports. It is the update report that also went to Cabinet in November. So in terms of the data contained in the report, it's an update over the last 3 months, June to date, focusing on data from August to September 2024. In terms of the highlights, in terms of the report, so the first area would be odour complaints. So odour complaints have increased in October when compared to September, with the last week in September receiving over 100 complaints to the council. It should be noted that in August, September and October, the number of complaints were above those reported in both 2022 and 2023 for the same month. One of the things that we also report on is odour events. So there were 12 odour events in October. So that was 12 days where over 10 complaints were received throughout that day. And just to update, obviously the data is a couple of weeks out of date. So in November to date, there's been over 550 complaints made, which is a further increase on the previous month. In relation to air quality data, we report in there the percentage exceedance of the WHO annoyance level per week, and it's reported in section 2.1.4, and this shows the level of hydrogen sulfide fluctuating but shows increasing levels in October. Complaints continue to correlate well to the air quality data because we compare the complaints alongside that WHO exceedance in the graph, which is shown in section 2.6 of the report, shows good correlation throughout that period, noting that people do complain when the incidents of air quality are worsening. And just to update you in terms of some further information, to date in November, the maximum level of 47.9% exceedance of that WHO level was reported by the EA for the week ending the 10th of November at Marys Way monitoring station. In relation to EA updates, section 2.17 to 2.23 provides updates from the EA through their compliance assessment reports and a reissued CAR form relating to the capping and phasing plan. However, it is noted that the CCS scored for the site remains unaltered. The report also provides updates provided from Wally's Quarry. So on the 25th of October, they published an information update on site capping, sidewall engineering and landfill gas infrastructure updates for the site. And last but not least, the KPIs for Newcastle for August to October are attached to the Appendix 2 of the report. I'm happy to take any comments or questions in relation to it. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Councillor Wheeldon.
If I go to 2.5, They talk about best practical means. Is that our wordage or the Environment Agency?
Best practical means is actually defined in the legislation in the Environmental Protection Act.
Okay.
And it is a defence against causing a statutory nuisance, i.e. if a industry or a business can demonstrate that they're operating to best practicable means, then it is a defence defined in the legislation.
Having said that, thank you, Nesta, for clarity. Having said that, it worries me because that sort of thing, a lawyer rubs his hands together with glee when you see that, because, for example, one of the things I've used myself in court was to use best endeavours, which is the greatest get out of jail phrase in the world. So best practical means probably for me in this case, because Wally's Quarry is such a hot topic, I would expect something a little more defined. Obviously, if that's in the legislation, they put it in there as a get out of jail clause when someone wants to get around something. And I can foresee that will be an overused thing as things progress forwards. I'm just making this statement now because I feel I have to. Okay.
Okay, do you want to respond to that, Nesta?
I think obviously in terms of that, it is stipulated in the legislation that is one of the defences, and that's one of the things that through all the work with Wally's and the Environment Agency, are they operating to current best practice? Ultimately, it is something for the courts to decide. Obviously, our position would be that we do not consider them to be operating to best practicable means, or else we wouldn't have the odour levels that we do have. There's obviously two sides to that argument, and ultimately, that is something for the court to make a decision on. But equally, as it says in that paragraph, it's something that we have to be aware of and we need to be mindful of in terms of the operational practices there and where they are and how that compares to national, international current guidelines as to what is reasonable at a landfill site.
Thanks, Nesta. I'm sure the lawyers have got that in tow.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to read in the local press on the 15th of November that this October was the highest number of recorded complaints for an October in the last 4 years. And I'm sure officers and colleagues share our frustration and my residents' frustration that we seem to be going backwards, not forwards. I've got a question about this all-time high of 4 years and whether officers, particularly Nesta, would you see a correlation between what the operator is saying in terms of why we've got the highest complaints and reports in 4 years? Can you see any correlations?
I think in relation to it, the site is moving forward. There have been improvements on the site over the 4 years. I think if we look back to the sort of site that we were looking at in 2021 when we served the abatement notice, there was very little capping. Gas infrastructure wasn't as developed as it is. So there has been progress in relation to those. That said, what we are seeing is we are still seeing those emissions. We are still seeing the odour events. We are seeing quite high levels of the hydrogen sulfide. And, I'm going out undertaking those monitoring exercises and those correlate very well, and that's obviously why, we consider that there has been a breach of the abatement notice because we do feel that they are justified complaints and the odour is beyond those levels. So although the site conditions have changed, the outcome hasn't necessarily, and we are still getting those issues.
Thank you, Nesta.
Okay, Councillor Wheeldon.
This isn't a question, Nesta. It's a comment, if I may. If we go to 2.7, I'd just like to make the point on a number of clauses of the report. Steve Reid, OBE MP, Secretary of State, Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, confirmed he would give consent for the prosecution to proceed. That's a fact. Hold that thought. At 2.11, the government, for which he is a member of the group of ministers that make up the cabinet, said that they believed that there was no reason for a public inquiry. Hold that thought. And if you go to 2.12, it then says that we have full confidence in the Environment Agency. I can't see those three things fitting very well together. And I just want to make the point that, yes, you can prosecute. Actually, we're not having a public inquiry. In other words, they're just giving us something to toy around with. And then they say that they have full confidence in the Environment Agency. They must be the only person who's got any confidence in the Environment Agency within about 300 miles of North Staffordshire. Just want to make the point. Thank you. You're very tolerant.
Any more? Nesta, can I ask about the complaint data on 2.1? You've got the complaints to, the Borough Council, the complaints to the Environment Agency, and consistently we've seen the complaints to the Environment Agency are higher. I've got a sort of two-part question to that. Do you find that the correlation of that is changing? Do you find that is there more and more people complaining to the council compared to the Environment Agency? Because obviously we want people to complain to both, but it's always been a challenge that people are complaining to the Environment Agency first or only and not complain to the Borough Council. Do you think there's more we can do in terms of making people aware there that they can complain to the Borough Council as well? And another part of that question is it only residents of Newcastle who can complain to the council? Because I've had people visiting Newcastle who've wanted to complain about the smell from Wally's. But to complain to the Borough Council, you have to sign in, have an account, everything. Is that only for residents, or can that be for people visiting the area also?
So in relation to complaints, the figures for the Environment Agency have always been higher than to the Borough Council. And I think that's most probably quite correct. They are the principal regulator, so you would usually complain to whoever is the principal regulator. Obviously, in terms of communication, we do know some people only complain to us. We know some people complain to both, and we know some people only complain to the EA in relation to those. So we do collect quite a lot of information when people complain, and that is all really, really useful information. So people make their choice, and they will, respond or complain to whoever they see fit at that point in time. We will continue to push our message, that, the complaints are responded to. We do look at those. Equally, when we're out doing visits, we will equally try and contact some of those people. If they do say that they can be contacted by phone, we will try and do that on the occasions when we're out and visiting. So they are of great value to us. And I think from the data that we present, you can also see that, they do correlate, and people are, I think it's quite fair to say people are complaining when it is at its worst. So in relation to people complaining, yes, in terms of our website, you do need to create an account to be able to submit the complaint. So there's two other ways that you can do it. Obviously, if you live outside the area, then you can make a complaint to your other council, or people have been complaining via the messaging portal in terms of the website. So rather than registering an account just through the customer services portal, is the other way that we've been able to do that. So we have been receiving them from outside of the area, particularly over the recent weeks.
Okay, thank you. And they will still get, their case will still be tracked. They'll get a number, and then they'll still get a case.
Yes, if they go through the customer services portal, then yes, they will do. Okay,
and I think it might be on your point about the complaints. I think it might be, as as we've seen with this November, possibly going to be one of the worst, if not the worst November. And then we know it gets worse in winter. If there's anything we can do around pushing our message about complaining to the Borough Council as well as the EA, just reiterating that message, I think that'd be really beneficial. Just to advertise the council as available as a source of complaints, because I think more and more people are aware. But I think as the smell gets worse, I think it's definitely something we could push more. Do any of the councillors have any other comments, questions? Councillor Richards?
To ask, is there a reason why you have to register and log in to make a complaint? Is that for data? Is it? Because I was at Sainsbury's and I wanted to make a complaint because it was absolutely awful, but I had to log in and I couldn't remember the password, so I didn't end up doing it. And I do think perhaps that was kind of a barrier for me, being of a certain age.
We have made it so that we can log in, so that there's two things really. The addresses can be verified because the address data is very, very important for us. And also it saves you in terms of repeat visits. So obviously it saves some of your information. So once you have registered once, then it should actually be a time saving exercise rather than an extra, hurdle.
Okay, any more? Yeah, Councillor Wilden.
Just thank you for explaining, Nessa, how people, and thank the councillor for raising the point, people from outside the area can also register a complaint. I was talking to several people who live between here and the outskirts of Alsager, where on particular days they've actually had toxic odours there from Wally's Quarry. And the reason they're recognised is because they drive to and fro. And that's a heck of a long way. So it must be pretty bad when you're in the thick of it for it to be blown by the wind to that extent, because it's the Cheshire borders. And I think that's something that needs noting. So I will actively now encourage those people to put an official complaint in along with the others.
Thank you. If there are no more questions or comments, then we'll thank you, Nesta, for that report. And we will go on to item 6 on the agenda, which is options for scrutiny review of parks. You may recall we had mentioned parks on the work programme at the last meeting. So I think I'll hand over to Andrew to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the report I've prepared, obviously, yes, on the our last meeting of the 16th, it was suggested that one of the things you wanted to look at was the state of different parks in the borough, and obviously, as the chair said, that was added to the work programme. Obviously, as a large landholder, we've got a significant number of land sites that are maintained as designated parks, additional green open spaces, so on throughout the borough. And these locations include both district and strategic parks, neighbourhood parks, sports grounds, semi-natural green space, including nature reserves, green corridors, green routes, and the total number of sites is in the region of 500. So it's a significant number that we deal with. In terms of breaking those down, the council has 5 district parks, which are the Brampton, Lyme Valley Parkway, Woolstanton Marsh and Park, Wye Road Park and Bathpool Park. 20 neighbourhood parks, such as Arnold Grove, Crackley Recreational Ground and Thistlebury Parkway, and a number of sports grounds, including the Westlands, Woolstanton Park and the Whammy, in addition to leased out sites such as Bircham Wood and Row Lane. Local nature reserves include Bradwell Woods, Bates Woods, Pool Dam Marshes, and in additional 4 green corridors, including the Newcastle Greenway and the Kidsgrove Greenway. It's worth noting that 6 of the council's parks have been awarded green flag status, which is an international quality accreditation mark for parks. The green flag status is achieved on presenting high quality grounds maintenance and providing for a robust live management plan, demonstrating achievement for the future time-bound plans in several areas, including building and infrastructure maintenance and investment, biodiversity and environmental sustainability, environmental management, community involvement, and marketing and communication. Management, including risk assessments and costed maintenance costs. Accreditation is awarded following a robust and detailed inspection regime, which is determined by Keep Britain Tidy, and it's undertaken by an unannounced or mystery shopper to all the sites to test independently or interview relevant officers in relation to all aspects of the judging criteria. So effectively, we don't know when they're coming along. It's worth noting also that in addition, the council has 63 playgrounds, which all require weekly site inspections with running repairs undertaken on a regular basis, predominantly aged play equipment that is uninviting and produces a significant number of complaints annually in relation to the visual aspect, and a small number of playgrounds which unfortunately are subject to repeat vandalism. And again, require substantial investment to repair them to ensure they're safe. In 2022, you may remember the committee undertook a review of the council's open space and green infrastructure strategy. These strategies are produced to help us recognise the need to make our cities, towns and villages more sustainable in response to the challenges such as the climate emergency and ecological crisis. Council's natural environment is a valued open space network of a critical role to play for us all. And over the last few years, this has been brought into sharp focus, obviously following the COVID-19 pandemic. The review provided a response to these challenges and to identify the strategic opportunities to deliver potential solutions, as well as to inform a sustainable and considered approach to growth in the borough up to 2040. Contained within the strategy and the Council's Sustainable Environment Strategy, which we gave an update at the last meeting, the Council has also produced and implemented its urban tree planting strategy, which is now known as the Borough Tree Planting Strategy, and its grassland management strategy, a review of which is currently ongoing. So what I'm suggesting is, obviously, in terms of just saying the state of parks is a very broad and wide topic. So therefore, really, I think it would be prudent to try and hone that into any particular area. And in section 2, I just suggest a number of possibilities that we could look at, but there are obviously others that you as members of the committee may wish to look at as well. So the first is obviously to build on the report undertaken a couple of years ago to look at the utilisation of parks and open spaces, as well as historical landmarks, and how that could be, say, brought together in a marketing point in terms of having trails and things, not necessarily just in individual parks, but trying to link them together. Obviously looking at the 2022 open space and green infrastructure strategy, and again looking at investment and funding opportunities to enhance existing sites, which may fit in with the work on the local plan. It's ongoing at the moment. Review of current play park provision, and again options for the future. And again, to look at how parks and green open spaces can help the council in its work to protect and enhance biodiversity. So those are things that myself and my team have come up with. But as I say, we're completely open to any other ideas you may have. So over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So, yeah, very much welcome ideas and discussion on the potential for a task and finish group around parks. So please raise your hand if you want to speak. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really welcome this. I think it's time we looked at this. I'm thinking about the parade park and particularly the parade pavilion. Now, we have several stakeholders who are concerned that since the outbreak of austerity, let's put it that way, the pavilion has lay completely unused, and we have regular complaints of antisocial behaviour on that site. Stakeholders are saying that as it is a council building, they're wishing that some decision was made as to whether it was either going to be brought back into use in some way or demolished, because they feel that at present it's nothing but an eyesore and an attraction for this kind of poor behaviour. Now, let me put it out there that I'd be very interested in being on a task and finish group about play provision and about parks. It's something that I feel very strongly about. And there are many stakeholders in Silverdale that wish to have a body, if you like, to look at this. So first of all, do you know of any plans for the parade pavilion? And my second point is Silverdale Parish Council have spent a lot of money on the parade park, new benches, painting railings, new equipment, and stakeholders are feeling it's one-way traffic at the moment and they'd like more input from the council. So I'd be failing in my duty if I didn't raise these points.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, they're fair points. In terms of the pavilion, there are no plans or indeed money available at the moment to do anything with that particular building. But obviously, we'll take that back with the portfolio holder. We'll have a look at it. I think your general point is a valid one, that actually, and it's not just applicable to Newcastle. It's an issue throughout the country where investment in parks and open spaces has suffered over the last probably couple of decades. If I'm being truthful, it's not necessarily all down to austerity, albeit that played a part. So it's really about how we move that forward. And as I say, there are potential funding opportunities, but there's also ways of potentially looking at how we administer those going forward. So. And again, as we're going through the sort of final stages of adoption of the local plan, it's whether there's any scope of potentially using Section 106 monies or that type of thing for more targeted investment. But my colleague Craig will probably be able to answer more detailed on that. But it is certainly an issue that if we want to maintain, these really important open spaces, that they do need to be invested in. And as I say, their influence or their contribution to, certainly biodiversity, and which is a big topic at the moment, as well as people's health and well-being, shouldn't be overstated. In terms of the play parks, again, completely agree on that. That is one of our suggestions. We have a lot of them. Again, there are a number, as I said in the report, that are in quite old, relatively poor condition, and it's whether they are fit for purpose in a more modern age. To be perfectly honest, so again, would more than welcome a review of those. So that helps.
Chair, if you'll indulge me, just one follow-up question.
Councillor Brown.
Parade Park, would that be classed as a neighbourhood park in this plan?
Yes, I think it would. Yeah.
Okay, please raise your hand. Sorry, I've forgotten who was going next. Councillor Wright.
Say that 6 of the council's parks have been awarded green flag status. I just wondered which ones they were, or they are.
Thought you would. I should have written them all down, shouldn't I? Lyme Valley is one. Queen's Gardens out here is another. Bathpool Park. Then I'm struggling. I'll email you the full list. That's okay.
Councillor Wheeldon.
I think before you can make any comments about investment, you have to have the green spaces protected. I'd like to, first of all, congratulate the entire team who work on the parks and also the council for protecting those green and open spaces and parklands in the critical and strategic plan that we have for the borough going forward. So investment can come and development can come after the protection. So congratulations on that and thank you very much. One of the things that I've noticed, we have a dog. We used to have children, but they're men now. So I was always very interested in parks and going to see the people who live in Aspire housing near to the Thistlebury Park, which backs sideways onto the Dick Turpin, and other parks like it where we've walked the dog and so on. I do notice that there are litter bins, but very, very few. I think I can't say we need more. I just ask that the team look at it because, for example, the little Thistlebury Park, quite a few older children as well as younger children come from the academy, either at their break or at close of school in summer, and they sort of sit on the benches and they mooch around the swings and so on, and that's great and it's fun and it's lovely. But they also bring with them baggage of litter. And I think there's only one bin there or perhaps two. And I just think I'd ask the team if they could sort of perhaps do a little audit of bins. And I know then you've got to get someone to empty them. And it's a knock-on sort of domino effect. But I'd just ask if you could look at it.
Those litter bins are effectively now under constant review. So we are just in the process and actually in terms of litter bin emptying and that operation, the in-cab and back office system that we use for managing the recycling waste service is now going into street scene. It's been in terms of litter bin emptying for getting on now for the past 12 months. So that system records every bin, records how full it is, how often it's emptied, and therefore it's under continual review. I'll be quite honest, I don't think we want to be very careful about putting additional litter bins in because they are costly to service, but it's more about getting the right number of bins in the right place. So part of the ongoing review is very much looking at that, which will probably mean that we move bins to where they are needed. We're just in the process of putting that system into the sweeping side. So eventually that information, two lots of information will marry up, and then that will give you a level of issues on litter. The other side that we're looking at as well is the dog litter bins as well, and actually whether we would be better moving forward to just have combined bins, which the majority of authorities do operate now. And again, that will mean you've got more provision effectively for a wider range of waste, so to speak.
Can I just respond?
Councillor.
I take your point entirely. I just would like you to have another look at it. For example, because that Thistlebury Park, and I know it's Thistlebury and it's my turf, but because it's under such high use, it's not just walkers passing through, it's the sort of almost gathering point for young folk. Because gone are the days of youth clubs and so on. That's their sort of grassy youth club, if you like. There is more waste. And the number of times I've been there where it's actually those who've tried to keep it tidy and put things in the bin, it's spilt over. So that might be part of the audit, looking at amount as well. Thank you very much.
Councillor Rees.
Yeah, I was going to just mention about the dog waste bins and whether it was time for a review, and obviously that's going to be looked at. What would we be thinking in terms of that? I mean, it may not have reached that stage, whether we'd retain the existing dog waste bins as well as multi-use.
It would depend, I think, on their design, in all honesty. So there's certain ones that I know probably aren't suitable, but that's no reason to say they couldn't be replaced with a general sort of litter bin.
Just one other point. You've mentioned kind of buildings. I was just going to, it's just out of curiosity, really. Again, in my ward, the Marsh by Porthill Park Cricket Club, we've got a building there, which is an eyesore, but I believe it is well used by football teams, changing rooms. Is that, I'm guessing that's financially viable, and it's just an eyesore, and lots of various residents have kind of said it's just a real kind of mess.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is well used. It's not the prettiest building by a long stretch, and as I say, unfortunately, at the moment there just isn't any capital funding to do anything with them. But as I say, that's where we're at the moment. Whether that changes and grants and other things come to being, because again, sports clubs and things. So maybe there's other ways of looking at it, but actually sports clubs and the like can get to funding that we as a local authority can't necessarily.
Thanks. Yeah, and then that's kind of what I wanted to suggest, really, as part of that, whether we keep a kind of keen eye on that, really, about things that we can kind of link into for kind of grants and charities and what have you.
And we can certainly, provide support or facilitate things like that, even if we might not be able to put the grant in ourselves necessarily. But yeah.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, I know we've got some investment coming up in Clough Hall Park by the end of March, which we're very much looking forward to. The consultation is now closed, I believe. I just wanted to say, we've also got a pavilion, which is used for rugby and football, which is great. We use it for the Rotary bonfire. It is quite well used in that way. But since it's had the new roof put on, because we had some little darlings that were bouncing up and down on top of there and caused damage, that section has not been reopened as anything like a cafe, or is that something that the borough would look at, or would it be local community groups who wanted to take it over? Because I'm thinking if we're going to get this nice new kiddies park up that area, it would be something we could think of. And I'd also like to say a big thank you for whoever has put the lovely goat trippy trappy bridge back in Clough Hall Park. It's now not sank into the stream. It's all nice and new, and we'd just like to say thank you very much. It's taken a while, but we've got it back.
No, thank you. And yeah, I mean, your point on the building, I think we're beyond the Borough Council running those types, and certainly cafes and things like that. So I think a community solution, again, that we would do our best to support would be the best way going forward. And then there's some local ownership then, isn't there? And hopefully that will allow it to be, sustainable.
Councillor Barker.
I'm pleased when I hear the word funding. I'm a firm believer of communities applying for funding, and it's getting the businesses on side with you. Not to sound too big-headed, over the years, I've been very successful at that. And only today, I've had Ibstock Brick Company ring me, and they are going, because it isn't all about repairing and everything, and they are working alongside me to make sure the elderly people aren't freezing cold. So they are going to do me, which I normally get funding for, they're going to do me warm packs for the community. That'll go alongside the project we're doing with the young people, the children. So I feel it's very important that we look at funders, businesses. You'd be surprised how many businesses will help communities. And I just think it's a good way of working alongside the council to do that. I know I'm going to be doing it with now Ibstock have approached me. But yeah, I think
very
it's
good.
a good way of getting extra money into your community.
Yeah, no, thank
you.
Councillor Richards.
I know this might be kind of very much in the future, but what thoughts have we had about kind of recycling in the parks?
That's a really good question, actually, and again, one that you then sort of have to really debate about mixing dog waste. I hate to back with litter because once you've done that's it. It's exceptionally difficult, to be honest, because people's behaviours, you know, we're all trained at home. We've trained ourselves over the last 20 years or so, so we're pretty good at separating materials at home. When it comes to work or out, what they call on-the-go recycling, it's very, very difficult, and I'm not hugely unsuccessful, to be honest, wherever it's put in. That said, the previous government, as part of its resource and waste strategy in 2018, one of the 4 strands of that was to introduce a deposit return scheme. Now, they've opted for what they call an all-in, which will mean that some of the materials you put in your blue bin at the moment will become DRS, and that I don't agree with that bit. But what you call the on-the-go bit for anti-littering probably would work. So effectively, what we've just been speaking about, the discarded plastic bottles or aluminium cans, will have the deposit on them, and one would hope that our younger people, or indeed anybody really, is then able to take those back and redeem that deposit. So I think that's probably the answer for on-the-go litter. If it comes in, it's scheduled to come in 2027, so there's a few years to go yet, and a lot of hurdles to get over. But for me, that's the answer, not necessarily putting different types of bins in.
I've just seen that in practice. I went a short break in Malta, and I saw people carrying big bags of plastic around, and they'd been in the bins and they'd sorted out, and they were going to get the deposit back, which
it's a big thing on the continent, but of course they don't have curbside recycling collections like we do. So there's a balance there, but I do think for litter it's probably a good thing.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, as we've heard that, you know, parks is such a broad topic. We've heard about the issues of play parks and about maintenance and about bins and parks. What we now need to do is decide what we want to be the focus of our task and finish group. And obviously, the more specific and manageable the task is, the more likely we are to finish and have a good outcome we can then study. So I'd encourage you to look at section 2, which has some suggestions for potential areas we can scrutinise. It's not limited to that. There could be other things we may want to do, but again, keeping it quite narrow in scope and having a sort of defined area we want to look at. So if any councillors want to make a proposal of areas we may want to have in this task and finish group. Councillor Richards.
I think 2.4, a review of current play provision and options for the future, because I think that kind of connects with a programme for getting children out and getting them more active and healthy. And obviously tackling obesity as well. So you've got kind of a few things that all interact with that. So yeah, that's my suggestion.
I agree entirely with that, Councillor Richards. Are there any other proposals? Councillor Rees.
Just an idea around 2.5, really, around, again, green open spaces and enhanced biodiversity, and whether this is something that we can kind of get local schools and colleges, involved in, and a real kind of push on that.
Okay. Go on, Andrew.
I was just going to say, one of the things we could probably link that into. So it says in the report we're just sort of starting to look at a review of the grassland management strategy. So that brings a lot of the biodiversity side of things in. I just wonder whether we bring that review back to this. We were going to anyway, weren't we, David? So we bring that review back to this group, and from that we might therefore tease that out, or maybe look at another small piece of work on the back of that, I think would be good. But I'm certainly really happy to look at the play parks and things.
Councillor Brown.
I just want to endorse the fact that if we've already had a review, that we use that as a basis. That worked well when we did the Wallis Quarry inquiry. We went back to the earlier review. But realistically, I think we're going to have to look at least aspects of 2.3 because it talks about funding opportunities. And I think realistically, anything we do, the bottom line is we've got to think how things are going to be funded and not just set up, but how they're going to be maintained over time.
And again, I think the play parks is a really important part of that, because I think for too long it's been very easy to just set them up, but you're quite right, the ongoing maintenance of them and actually whether they're fit for purpose in the right place and all of that really does need to be looked at.
Okay, councillors, I think I'm going to make a proposal then that we look at 2.4, which would be a task and finish group about play park provision, reviewing that for the borough, but also when it says options for the future, that would obviously include things like funding arrangements, potential sources of funding. I think that would be a good place to start with a task and finish group. Does anyone want to second that proposal? Yep, Councillor Richards, thank you. So all in favour of having a task and finish group set up and accepting the two recommendations there, that we accept this report and we have play park provision and future options as the focus. All raise hands if you're in favour. Thank you very much. Andrew.
Just through you, Chair, if I could just ask if I could have any names of volunteers, and then what we'll do is we'll arrange a sort of separate get together just to start things off, if that's okay, and sort of map out how we're going to undertake the review.
Are you volunteering, Councillor? Is that a question? Excellent. Well, I'm sure the councillors will get in touch with you, Andrew, if they want to be part of this group. Yeah, thank you very much. So we'll move on then, councillors, to the next item, which is the tree risk management strategy on pages 39 to 44 of your pack. And is that Andrew again? Thank you.
Sorry, yes, me again. Members, you'll remember that I think it was probably this time last year that we bought a paper to you just to outline how we manage trees, because I think that there was a question quite rightly asked about, obviously with the what's now the Borough tree planting strategy, we were planting all these trees, and was there actually a management system in place to ensure that we look after them? And I think hopefully we put your minds at rest following that meeting. This report really builds on that, and I think what is painfully needed, and what we are proposing here to take through Cabinet is to actually adopt a formal tree risk management strategy, so that the council's got a strategy that's very clear in terms of how it wants to manage its trees, and actually there is an appropriate review and system within there. Again, just some just the reasons being it needs to strike a proportionate and balanced approach, obviously between risks and benefits gained from trees, and make sure our tree resources are safe and diverse as reasonably practicable. And again, in this way, the council is a better place to demonstrate that we've fulfilled our duty of care and taken all precautions, as far as reasonably practicable. I know we spoke about that those words earlier with the Wallis Quarry report, but effectively to avoid risks to safety to the people who use and pass by sort of our sort of land and neighbourhoods. So again, just some background. So we've got approximately 650 hectares of land, so it's a significant amount, as we said in the previous report. We've currently got around 115,000 trees, over 307 of those sites, and those trees that are in the ownership of the Borough Council. Again, highly valued. in the landscape in terms of wildlife values and the benefits they provide to climate and people of Newcastle. We're all aware of the undeniable benefits. And again, we have to recognise that there's significant numbers of the variety of tree stock, multiple locations, and also the ever-present risk, unfortunately, associated with every tree in our ownership and management. So last year, and I think we just purchased this system when we bought the previous report to you. So we've bought a new tree management package called Easy Tree, and we've now been operating that for just over 12 months. And it's really moved us forward in a significant way. So we've now been able to plot and manage all of our tree stock. So we now know every tree and where it is. So that is building our intelligence work, and again, directing our approach to so we've got limited resources. We're lucky as a local authority to have our own arboricultural team, but we've we've limited resources to grow that. So we have to make sure that those resources are used to the best effect. And again, this package is helping us do that. So we've repurposed that team as well. So again, there's a new manager in post, and we've reassigned one of the existing staff resource into an arboricultural surveyor post, and again that will help build this intelligence that I spoke about before. And again, in the past, we've had additional surveying support through an external contractor, and that's still in place at the moment as we get to into a far better place than maybe we have for a number of years. So we obviously accept that tree failures cause significant damage or can cause significant damage and initiate litigation claims. So again, that's something we need to measure and manage. And again, it's worth just noting that across the UK, there's on average there's 6 fatalities, which can be attributed to falling trees and branches each year. And I think Cheshire East have had one fairly recently, which is not good. And again, this is generally considered by the Health and Safety Executive, and it's not acceptable really. But, again, for us as an authority, it just focuses minds that we have to be seen to be managing our tree stock effectively. So what we're proposing in the strategy is to effectively have a practical and manageable process and putting trees into different management zones, which will be attributable in high and low usage locations, monitoring single trees regardless of the location, where trees have defects and of some concern, and then that develops a programme of tree inspection and management that requires, again, a practical approach where resources are directed to the areas where there's the greatest risk to people and property. It's not, unfortunately, practicable to inspect every single tree that we've got, or we'd like to be able to do that. So designing usage zones in each site, so each of the site where the 300 odd sites we've got trees, so that they relate to the intensity of the site, and again, use based on up-to-date knowledge, again, just our staff going about their daily duties, and again, sort of linked to that, the likelihood of people being injured or buildings or value property being damaged. So what the strategy or the management strategy identifies is frequency, method and timing of inspections, and then in terms of the zones, we have red, purple, blue and brown usage zones, introducing a frequency and methodology of inspection, which is then associated with a type of assigned usage within each of the zones. And not surprisingly, your red zone is is going to be your highest risk area through to your brown zones, which should be general woodland, so areas with no formal pathways or clear desire routes would probably be no inspection, so trees within the middle of a glade. Obviously, post-major storm routes, which affect parts of the borough, and indeed we've seen that just this weekend, although we've only had one tree down so far, thankfully. And again, that's informed by incident recording data and officer knowledge. Individual trees that have been identified through programme surveys or third-party reports in any priority zone area where the tree defect conditions raise the need for it to be monitored more regularly than the designated zone in which they stand will be re-inspected on a frequency determined by the tree defect. So what I'm saying is this has to be quite fluid and managed on a risk basis. It's worth just noting that as well that in the past we've used cable bracing over a number of years, which have enabled a number of high amenity trees to be retained with the assistance of these braces. And again, cable brace trees need to be, there's nothing wrong with that approach, but they probably need to be inspected on an enhanced basis. And we're suggesting on a rolling programme of every 2 years from ground level and every 5 years from aerial inspections. So obviously, as I say, we've got the Easy Tree system now, so accurate recording is absolutely essential, and we've got that ability. And again, the strategy is built around the importance of recording incidents where trees fall or drop significant branches, and again, to ensure transparency with our health and safety obligations to ensure we have full oversight of that, and indeed with our insurers. Training is really important with our staff. So we are putting more resources into that, and we've identified a number of our staff now to attain professionally industry recognised arboriculture association acceptance level of competency, which we didn't have before. So we're trying to raise the standard of that group. They are good, but we want them to have the necessary accreditation that goes with it. So I won't go into any more massive detail. It's all in the report in terms of what the strategy will look like. And as I say, the proposal is to take that forward now for adoption to Cabinet in the next few months, but obviously happy to take any questions or comments.
Councillor Rees.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for bringing this report here, Andrew. It's it's really good, a lot of great stuff in there, and it's really brilliant to hear about the training as well that you're investing in. I've just got just a few questions, and a lot of it, I suppose, it's around kind of clarity, really. I mean, I was thinking in climate change, we now seem to be kind of living with climate change in real time, I was kind of thinking the regular review of the 2 yearly regular review. I was thinking, is that kind of sufficient? Is it adequate? But you did make the point about this is still quite fluid and on a risk, in terms of risk. And we had one tree coming down at the weekend. Was that the tree in Madeley?
Was, yeah.
Yeah. What kind of zone? Do we know what zone that?
Interestingly, that tree had been identified for felling anyway, so it was due to come down in the next few weeks. So it was in a red zone.
So that was in a red zone.
That was in a red zone, and it was already on the radar. Thankfully, it fell in exactly where we would have felled it anyway. So and I believe again, coming back to the community, they want to use it and make some sculptures out of it, which is great news as well. But yes, you're right. It's very difficult. We've got to just, I suppose, set a reasonable what we would deem a reasonable inspection regime within each of those zones. But you still have to accept that weather conditions and other things can unfortunately catch you out. So,
Yeah,
but the
absolutely.
idea is to, as I say, to continually review that as we go forward.
Thanks. And just on the council leased land and where kind of responsibility lies. And obviously this is going to be up for review, isn't it? Where you can explicitly find out where responsibility. Why can't we do that at the moment? I'm asking it for a specific reason as well, with land around the dingle, and there's a kind of there's some NHS land there, and there's trees our residents are really kind of worried about, and I'm kind of not too sure where responsibility lies.
I think you raise a really, really good point. So one of the things I was going to say, this is very much around Borough Council owned trees. Ours are not. There are many, many, many more. Highways trees are massive issue. I think now the county council I believe are starting to pull a strategy together very similar to this.
That was going to be another question.
So I hope they are. But then you've got the likes of Aspire Housing, as you say, probably Health Service, and who knows who else. And that's where it starts. The waters start to get a bit muddied, unfortunately. Really, best practice is that any organisation with any number of trees really should have a strategy in place, and that's why we're doing it here. But yeah, the bit about leased land, we've just got to be a lot more thorough in terms of what we do and the questions we ask, I suppose.
Okay, and just one more quick question: does the Easy Tree does that record data of TPOs on private land?
It won't on private land because it's just for our tree stock.
Right.
So TPOs that are on private land still fall within the council's responsibility, but they're on a different system. But they are all recorded.
Even those in a conservation area as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not directly related to this report, but I thought I'd ask the question anyway, because I've had a few queries by really kind of concerned residents who've got trees that have got TPOs, and really kind of worried really that they're in a, well, they want to try and kind of maintain them themselves, but they're too scared to put them. They're wondering about the health of the trees. And my understanding is they have to go kind of through the planning portal on this, which they've done a couple of years ago.
Right.
And now they kind of think, well, have we got to go through that whole kind of process again? And they will have, won't they?
They will, yeah. I mean, again, it's something that I'm guessing in terms of, the council's customer journey and things like that. So that, the One Council programme, again, is under continual review. So if there is a particular issue there, I'm quite sure we can look at that in a bit more detail to see if there's a better way of doing that.
And how would that get kind of action? Would that be them kind of writing to?
Brings someone else in, and then we can come back to you if you got any questions. I just want to bring in some other councillors.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, thanks.
The Wheeldon.
Just like to say, I think this is an excellent report. The team who put it together should be commended. It's great housekeeping, arboreal housekeeping, where you seem to have dotted every I and crossed every T. The only thing I would have asked for was, what are you doing about training? And you've even thought of that. So thank you so much. This is the basis of an excellent strategy moving forward. And I'm full of enthusiasm for it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Rees, you got another one? No, that was it. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Brown.
I just want to add to the praise for this document and the amount of work that's gone into it. And I think this is effective local government at work. When I was first elected 2.5 years ago, my main in-tray was about trees and about who owned the trees, what land they were on, who was responsible. And also residents asking me about maintenance. And through that kind of questioning, it's our job to scrutinise, but it's also our job to actually confirm when a good job's been done. And thank you very much.
You appreciate that.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, we have a couple of recommendations here, councillors, which is that we note the contents of the report and also recommended that we ask Cabinet to adopt this strategy as set out in the report. So all in favour of doing so? Thank you, that's carried. So we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the work programme, which is on page 45 to 48. So do any members have any comments on the work programme as set out? No. Councillor Rees?
Just around on the first page there, future items and update on allotment waiting lists and availability. Be really kind of keen to see that kind of data and where we're at with those, because again, it's a question that I'm being asked quite a lot as a local councillor.
Yep.
I'm guessing there's no news on what's going to be.
Afraid not, but keep asking every meeting. But we'll let you know when we have one. Fair point about the allotments, and that's noted on future items, as well as, of course, when we spoke about the animal welfare charter the other day. That'll go on to future items probably for about 12 months' time. Okay, if we're all happy with the work programme, then we will go on to item 9, public question time, of which I've not been made aware of any, and item 10, urgent business, of which I've not been made aware of any, which takes us to item 11, which is date of next meeting, which I believe is the 3rd of March. Okay, thank you very much. 3rd of March is the date of next meeting. So that brings us to the end of the agenda. So thank you very much, members, for attending, and I can now declare the meeting closed.